courtroom was silent. Every eye in the room fixed on one man, Daniel Harris. He sat at the defendant's table, hands clasped together, face calm. But inside his heart thundered like a war drum. Across from him sat his wife, Emma, her expression cold, rehearsed. Next to her, her lawyer, a smooth-talking man in a navy blue suit named Peter Lawson, smirked confidently. The air felt heavy. The sound of every footstep echoed like thunder. And then the door opened. Everyone turned. A figure stepped inside. A stranger to most, but not to Emma and her lawyer. Their faces went pale. The color drained from their skin. Even the judge looked surprised as whispers filled the courtroom. Daniel didn't move. He just looked at them. Emma and the man who had promised to destroy him. Because that stranger was the surprise witness Daniel had kept hidden until this very moment. The witness who knew everything. The lies, the fake documents, the betrayal. Every detail Emma thought she'd buried. And in that single moment, Daniel realized this wasn't just about winning a case. It was about justice. The kind of justice that doesn't shout, it waits. And when it arrives, it leaves everyone silent. Before the courtroom, before the lies, there was love. Or at least what Daniel believed was love. He met Emma 8 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. She was elegant, charming, and spoke with that quiet confidence that could make anyone feel seen. Daniel, a young architect back then, wasn't used to attention, especially not from someone like her. She laughed at his nervous jokes. He admired her ambition. She admired his simplicity. Within months they were inseparable, and within a year they were married. To everyone else they looked perfect, the ideal couple. But perfection is often just a curtain, hiding the cracks behind it. Daniel worked long hours, designing buildings that would one day carry his name. He wasn't rich, but he was building something, both in his career and at home. He wanted a family, a future. He wanted to give Emma everything she deserved. And for a while, she made him believe she wanted the same. But as the years passed, her warmth began to fade. Little arguments turned into long silences. Small complaints became deep resentments. Emma said Daniel cared more about his work than about her. Daniel said he was doing it for her. They stopped talking about dreams and started talking about money. The more success Daniel achieved, the more distant Emma became. She started spending weekends with friends, attending business events and traveling for rest. He didn't question her much. He trusted her completely. That trust would later become the weapon she used against him. Because while Daniel was drawing blueprints, Emma was drawing a plan, one that would leave him with nothing. It began subtly. She started managing their joint finances, insisting it would save him time. She encouraged him to put properties and investments in both their names. And Daniel, in love, naive and busy, agreed to everything. It wasn't until years later that he'd realize every signature, every document, every innocent conversation was leading him toward a trap. The trap that would explode inside a courtroom, with Emma sitting across from him, pretending to be the victim. But back then, Daniel was still blind. He still believed that love could fix anything. He still believed that Emma's smile meant safety. If only he'd known. That same smile would one day be used to destroy him. It started with whispers. The kind of whispers that never come from outside, but from somewhere deep inside your chest. The ones that say something's not right. Daniel first felt it one evening when he returned home early. The house was quiet, too quiet. A half-finished glass of wine on the table, music still playing, her phone face down. When Emma walked in moments later, she looked surprised. Not happy, not guilty, just caught off guard. "Didn't you say you'd be home late?" she asked. Her tone wasn't loving, it was defensive. That's when the first seed of doubt was planted. Over the next few months, strange things kept happening. Calls she'd taken another room. A credit card charge for a hotel she claimed was for a friend's birthday. Documents Daniel didn't remember signing. Each time he asked, she had an answer. Sharp, confident, rehearsed. And each time he believed her a little less. Then came the day that broke the illusion completely. A bank statement. A missing amount Daniel couldn't explain. He asked Emma calmly at first. She brushed it off and said it was a misunderstanding. But the more he pressed, the colder she became. "Maybe if you paid attention to your family instead of your work," she snapped. "You'd know where the money goes." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He went through his files, his emails, his business records, and there in the shadows of paperwork, he found the first clear sign of betrayal. A company account transfer authorized with both their names, but the destination was unknown. He followed the trail. It led to a private investment and a fake one, a shell company registered under a name Daniel didn't recognize. But when he looked deeper, the name that appeared as legal advisor made his stomach drop. Peter Lawson, a name that would soon become his worst nightmare. Peter was Emma's new lawyer, the one she said was helping with tax advice. But in truth, he was helping her drain everything Daniel had built. And while Daniel was trying to understand what went wrong, Emma and Peter were already 2 steps ahead, redrafting contracts, shifting ownerships, preparing legal papers. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was silent. Paper cuts, small and invisible, until one day they bled everything dry. One morning, Daniel walked into his office to find his accounts frozen, his company's shares transferred, and a court notice waiting on his desk, a divorce petition, accusing him of financial fraud and emotional abuse. It felt unreal. The woman he had loved, trusted, built a life with, was now claiming he had used her. He wasn't just losing a marriage. He was losing his name, his business, his reputation. And behind every false accusation stood Peter Lawson, smiling like a man who thought he'd already won. But Daniel wasn't finished. He may have been blindsided, but he wasn't broken. That night, staring at the divorce papers under a flickering desk lamp, he whispered to himself, "She thinks this is over." It wasn't over. It was only the beginning. By the time Daniel realized what Emma and Peter had done, the net had already tightened around him. It wasn't a mistake anymore. It was a setup, deliberate, calculated, and cruel. The next few weeks were chaos. Every day brought a new letter, a new accusation, a new headline. Local architect under investigation for fraud. Wife claims years of deception and abuse. It was everywhere. Online, in newspapers, even whispered among clients and colleagues. People who once respected him now avoided eye contact. Friends stopped calling. Investors withdrew support. In a matter of days, Daniel went from being a respected businessman to a man everyone doubted. And behind it all stood Emma and Peter, 2 people playing their parts perfectly. In court documents, Emma appeared as the fragile victim, her statements filled with emotion, rehearsed tears, and half-truths. Peter crafted every sentence like a weapon, each designed to make Daniel look guilty, heartless, and greedy. They claimed Daniel had hidden assets. They claimed he had forced Emma to sign business documents she didn't understand. They even presented false statements from witnesses, employees who mysteriously disappeared right after. Peter was smart, too smart. He knew how to twist facts, how to manipulate a judge's perception. He wasn't fighting for truth, he was fighting for victory. Daniel sat through every hearing trying to keep calm. But with each passing day, he felt the walls close in. Every argument from Peter made him look worse. Every word from Emma felt like a dagger coated with sugar, soft voice, deadly meaning. It broke him in ways he couldn't describe, not just because of what she was doing, but because of how easily she did it. No guilt, no hesitation, as if the years of love, trust, and marriage had never existed. One night, Daniel's lawyer, a quiet older man named Mr. Collins, looked at him across the table and said, "Daniel, if they win, you'll lose everything, your business, your assets, even your reputation, and she'll walk away clean." Daniel nodded, he knew it. But then he said something Mr. Collins didn't expect. "She won't walk away clean, I'll make sure of that." That night, Daniel stopped being the victim. He started becoming the strategist. He began collecting evidence, real evidence. Emails, call logs, bank transfers. He retraced every document Emma had pushed him to sign, every meeting she had arranged, every business trip she'd taken. The deeper he went, the darker it became. He discovered that Peter had been secretly handling transactions between Emma and one of Daniel's competitors. They'd been transferring money from Daniel's projects into accounts under a fake foundation name. And the worst part, Emma's lawyer, Peter, was also the silent partner in that competitor's firm. Daniel had been betrayed in love and in business, at the same time by the same people. Still, Daniel didn't explode. He didn't confront them. He waited. He knew that if he reacted out of anger, they'd use it against him. He needed to be smarter. He needed proof that would make them crumble from the inside, not through revenge in words, but through truth in court. Mr. Collins warned him, "You need something powerful, something that can't be denied." Daniel replied quietly, "I already have someone in mind." A small smile crept across his face, the first in months, because Daniel had realized there was one person, someone Emma and Peter had both forgotten about, someone who had seen everything. And when that person walked into court, Emma wouldn't just lose the case, she'd lose the mask she'd been hiding behind all along. Weeks passed. The trial dragged on, each hearing heavier than the last. Daniel had learned how to stay silent, while they painted him as a monster. Every insult, every accusation, he took it quietly. Because anger wasn't his weapon anymore. Patience was. But inside, something was shifting. Piece by piece, he was building his counterattack. And it started with one simple question. Who else was involved? He went through years of records searching for anomalies. Old bank statements, project ledgers, even receipts Emma once threw away. He noticed something strange. An assistant's signature appearing on transactions that Emma handled. Her name was Grace Miller, Emma's personal secretary. Grace had worked for Emma for years, until suddenly she'd resigned right before the divorce case began. Daniel remembered her, polite, quiet, and loyal. The kind of person who saw everything but never spoke unless asked. He reached out. At first, Grace didn't respond. Then one night she called him. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Harris, I shouldn't be calling you. They warned me not to." "Who?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. "Peter and your wife. They said if I ever spoke to you, they'd ruin me." Daniel stayed calm. "Grace, I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just asking for the truth." There was a long silence, then she whispered, "I have something you'll want to see." 2 days later, an envelope arrived at Daniel's door. Inside were printed emails, correspondence between Emma and Peter, planning the financial setup months before the divorce was even filed. It was all there, their plans, the accounts, even how they'd bribe witnesses. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the pages. It was the first time in months he felt the air return to his lungs. Not because he was happy, but because now, finally, the truth had a shape. Mr. Collins was stunned when he saw the evidence. This changes everything, but we'll need more than paper to convince the court." Daniel nodded. "I know, that's why I want her, Grace, to testify." Mr. Collins hesitated. "She's scared. They'll attack her credibility." "They can try," Daniel said, "but she's not the only one." Because Daniel wasn't done digging. Through Grace, he found another thread, an accountant named Leon, who had unknowingly processed Peter's fake transfers. Leon, too, had quit suddenly after a bonus payment. Daniel met him in a small cafe far from the city. At first, Leon was nervous, but when Daniel showed him the copies of the transfers, Leon realized he'd been used as a pawn. He agreed to testify. Piece by piece, Daniel was rebuilding his case, not just against Emma, but against Peter himself. And while they still believed they held all the power, Daniel quietly worked behind the scenes, recording, collecting, waiting. Then came the day Emma made her biggest mistake. During one of the hearings, she accused Daniel of hiding assets overseas, something Peter had crafted perfectly. But what she didn't realize was that one of those foreign accounts was already under government review, and Daniel had been cooperating with investigators for weeks. By the end of that day, the courtroom energy had shifted. Emma still smiled on the outside, but Peter was sweating. Something was changing, something they couldn't quite control anymore. Mr. Collins leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "They're nervous." Daniel looked straight ahead and replied quietly, "They should be. We haven't even started yet." Because deep down, Daniel knew the real battle wasn't the trial. It was what came after the truth finally broke through their lies. And soon he'd make sure that when it did, it would hit them like thunder in a silent room. Daniel had always believed in fairness. He built his business on trust, the kind that comes from keeping your word. But now he understood something deeper. When people use lies as weapons, truth itself must become a trap. From that realization came his plan, quiet, patient, and devastating. He didn't tell anyone except Mr. Collins. Even Grace and Leon, his witnesses, only knew parts of it, because Daniel knew. If Emma caught even a whisper of what he was planning, she'd twist it again. So he went silent. He stopped reacting in court. No visible anger, no eye contact with Emma. He became unreadable, like a man who'd already accepted defeat. Emma started lowering her guard. She smiled more during hearings. Peter grew bolder in his cross-examinations. They thought Daniel was tired, broken, but while they laughed at his silence, Daniel was busy building his weapon, evidence stitched with precision. He hired a private forensic accountant, not to find money but to trace emails, document signatures, and metadata. The accountant uncovered something shocking. Many of the documents Emma submitted as evidence were digitally altered, signatures copied, timestamps mismatched. Daniel now had proof that Peter, her lawyer, had fabricated legal documents. But exposing him directly would be risky. Peter was connected, respected, and ruthless. So Daniel chose something smarter. He'd let Peter expose himself. 2 weeks before the final hearing, Daniel arranged a quiet meeting with Grace and Leon. He told them only what they needed to know. There's going to be one more document. They'll use it in court. When they do, everything changes. Grace frowned. What document? Daniel smiled faintly. The one I gave them. See? Daniel had planted a bait. A harmless contract draft that looked like hidden asset paperwork. Through an old mutual contact, he made sure Peter got access to it secretly. And just as expected, Peter took the bait, edited it, rebranded it, and prepared to present it as final evidence against Daniel. Exactly what Daniel wanted. By the time the next hearing came, Daniel looked calm. The media had lost interest. The courtroom was half full. Even the judge seemed weary of the case. Peter stood up dramatically. Your Honor, we've discovered a new document, proof that Mr. Harris transferred assets to a secret company overseas. Gasps filled the courtroom. Daniel just sat there, eyes steady, hands folded. Mr. Collins leaned toward him and whispered, Is that? Yes, Daniel said softly, that's the one.